Hello, my name is Miguel Mata, and this is the This Way Out podcast, a component of the This Way Out project. This podcast is my attempt to address a few topics that can be especially challenging for some, but hopefully in a way that speaks to the humanity in each of us. It's my attempt at being a source for positive messages in a time where such messages can be hard to find. Good morning. It's May 14th, 2020. How is everybody doing? I hope you're doing well. I hope that you are doing well. I hope that you're in good health and in good spirits. As always, wishing you the very best on this May morning. I'm going to stick with something I started the last podcast and share a few this day in history facts. What do you say? I like history. I just like history, and this is fun for me. So I found a few gee whiz neat stuff that happened on this day in history. So what do you say we just go ahead and get started here? On this day, May 14th, 1973, America's first space station, Skylab, was launched into orbit. Skylab studied the sun over 700 hours of being in space. It studied the sun. The astronauts that spent their time there were able to, or the biological effects on people after prolonged periods of time in space. After 5 years, though, the space station did eventually, come back down into Earth and burned up in the atmosphere. And this day in 1804, Lois and Clark set out on their expedition to explore the Northwest. This is the same Lois and Clark who were helped out by the Native American Sacagawea, and in this year in 1804, they started on May 14th. They spent the winter in what is now North Dakota and Minnesota. And to that I say, goodness gracious, because I was stationed in North Dakota for a few years, and man, those winters are gnarly. But they eventually arrived at the Pacific Ocean the following year in November of 1805. And this one last little nugget of history that I found interesting is that the forefathers of this country, the United States, they assembled in Pennsylvania to settle some issues, some economic problems that they had run into in the newly formed nation there, newly formed independent nation of the United States, and they ratified the original Article of the Confederation and began drawing up what would become the Constitution of the United States. And that all happened on May 14th. That last one was May 14th, 1787. Pretty cool stuff, huh? Today I wanted to tackle something that was a little bit close to home. This project here, the focus is mental health, and promoting good mental health and that sort of stuff. And in today's episode, I just wanted to share with you some personal stuff about, mental illness, spotting it, and to point out that, it's not necessarily easy to spot. It's not easy to recognize, right? I think I think in some circles it's known as like the invisible illness. And I can tell you, as someone who knows a little bit something about it, it's not necessarily easy to spot in yourself, and it's not easy to spot in others. And I can kind of speak to that stuff pretty easy. And I'll tell you where a big part of my awareness, my moment of awareness, began taking place was when I retired from the military in 2017. I began having some really not so good thoughts, some really not so good thoughts that really didn't make a whole lot of sense. And they were the kind of thoughts where I was thinking about harming myself. And it's not necessarily, wasn't necessarily my proudest moment. Yeah, not one that I'm proud of, but one that I talk about openly because I really think that my experience and that experience, it helped me, and I think it can help others. But, just to provide a little bit more information, I was transitioning out of the military, and, I wasn't necessarily prepared for, I thought I was ready for the transition, but it's a kind of a difficult transition. Anyway, and in that period when, just after my, my retirement, I started having some really not so good thoughts, like really was thinking about bad stuff about myself and harming myself. So I reached out to, a mental health professional, and they were able to help me. They were able to help me kind of straighten things out and think a little bit more clearly. And, I remember I was prescribed at that time. I remember as if I stopped taking medication, but that's when I was prescribed an antidepressant medication, and things kind of turned around for me for the better. And I'll kind of go into that a little bit more after I share some other stuff, but that's really what started like my transitioning and started my period of enlightenment, if you will, as to how I look at mental health and mental illness and things of that sort. Because, in that period of enlightenment, I started to really be able to think a little bit more clearly, I became more aware of what I was saying and what I was doing and how I was behaving and things of that sort, and started to realize, unfortunately, that I had some stuff that I was apparently dealing with and not addressing, right? And when you have stuff like, when you have like anger issues and things like that, you do things and you say things that you don't necessarily consciously think about when you are saying or doing them. So specifically, like, I used to be a big yeller, right? I would raise my voice a lot at home, and in hindsight, I know now that had a lot to do with that. I had a high stress job. There was a lot of tension, a lot of that stuff, or whatever. It was very high stress, and I brought a lot of that home. And at the time, I really thought that I had it under control. Like, I was leaving the work stress at home, and I was leaving the home stress at home, and I wasn't letting the two worlds mix. But the reality of it is that I really did not do well. And the result of my not doing well was that I would come home and I would be very, very tightly wound up, and I had a short to no fuse, and I would raise my voice a lot to the people that I cared for the most, my wife and my kids and stuff like that, right? And in my mind, I was not doing anything wrong. I wasn't doing anything wrong. And I think some of that, to be honest, just to share a little bit about personally, a little bit more personally, I think that has a little bit to do with growing up. I grew up around yellers, people who raised their voice, and I never thought that it affected me. It was just something that was kind of normal. But later, once again, in that period of enlightenment, after I'd retired and after I'd gotten on this medication and seeked out help, I came to realize that, people respond to raised voices and yelling differently. People respond to it differently. And where maybe, I might not have been affected by it. See, I don't know. Honestly, I don't think I could really, truly, and honestly give an honest assessment of how I dealt with it, because I then became a yeller. But, my yelling was presumably, I believe, was a result of the environment that I was working in, the job that I was doing, etc., so on and so forth, and by not handling it well. But either way, I think I handled it well. But there were people in my family, my own family, that were not handling it well, and I didn't necessarily realize that. And the result of that was that I ended up causing damage myself. I ended up causing damage, and I ended up causing damage, psychological damage, and I'm having to spend a lot of time and energy now to try and repair that. But if I'd have had that awareness about myself then, there wouldn't be necessarily so much of a need to repair relationships and go back and try to repair harsh words and yelling and all that stuff. You know what I mean? Because that's what all that does. It ends up causing damage. And all of that being said, what I'm trying to point out here, the point that I'm trying to make here is that I had issues. I had issues that were not addressed, and I didn't necessarily know that I had those issues. So, mental illness, poor mental health is hard to spot and hard to see in yourself sometimes. Right? That's what I'm saying. That was the whole point of this whole rant and rigmarole, is to make the point that mental health is hard to see in yourself sometimes. And for sure, it is definitely very difficult, to nearly impossible almost, at least not without the help of a professional, to spot in someone else. I can tell you that I have come into contact with people. I know people who are close to me, who behave a certain way, and I have, in my own judgment and assessment and judgment, it's my assessment was that a person was lazy or unfocused or unmotivated, and when in all actuality that person was dealing with their own issues, and I was quote unquote misdiagnosing that or not seeing that myself, because I refused, in a lot of ways I refused to see it. I couldn't see it. It was nearly impossible to spot that this person that I was talking to, this person that I was close to, was dealing with and had a mental health issue. And because it's mental health and mental illness is hard to spot, and it's hard to see. It is an invisible illness that is difficult to pinpoint by the uneducated, amateur, whatever you want to say, someone who doesn't know better. And if I could just backtrack just a little bit, to kind of hit up on that medicine thing, the antidepressant thing, when the idea of medication was first presented to me, someone, the doctor who suggested I try it, said that I would feel like myself again. And I am someone who likes to be in control, and someone who doesn't mind things being turned up to 11, if that makes sense. I don't mind it. I like being sharp. I like being ready. I like being I like being turned up to 11. That's the kind of person that I am. And when it was suggested to me that when I take this medication, I would begin to feel like myself, well, my assumption was that medication was going to dull my senses, take away my control that I was so used to. So my response was, well, I like who I am right now. Who's the other guy going to be? Because that's not going to be me. I was very reluctant, but I tried it, and I'm here to tell you, it did wonders. It did wonders. For me, personally, it did wonders. So, if you're someone who deals with mental illness, if you're someone who deals with anger, anxiety, depression, that sort of stuff, and you're not taking medication because you're reluctant to do so, you think it's going to change who you are, definitely do your due diligence and research. But from my perspective, my point of view, my experience, it really, really helped. It really, really helped. And like I said, I really give a lot of credit. I give a lot of credit to the awareness and that clarity. I really think the clarity in that moment, once again, that moment of enlightenment, that enlightenment period that I experienced and still experience now, I credit, the medication. I give a lot of credit to the medication. Not all the credit, but a lot of the credit. But just to get back on track here, it's, mental health, people dealing with mental health issues, mental illness, it's difficult to spot. It's really hard to spot, not without the help of a really trained professional. And like I said before, if you know someone who maybe they show a lack of motivation or they have a lack of focus, once again, let me rephrase that. Maybe it appears like a lack of focus, and it appears like a lack of motivation or an inability to complete a task or that sort of stuff. Your perception is that a person is quote unquote lazy, etc., so on and so forth. That person might not be lazy. They might be dealing with a mental health issue. They might be dealing with something in their brain, right? Brain chemistry might be a little bit off and creating a mental block. I've seen it a million times. And you know what? I'll be honest. If I had to be honest, if I've seen it 10 times, I've probably addressed it poorly 7 to 8 times. 7 to 8 times. Before my moment of clarity, before my awareness that this stuff actually happens and actually exists, I probably handled it poorly 7 to 8 times out of 10 times that I've seen it. I'll be honest with you. So my message going forward now, at this point, as I try to help those who deal with these issues, who deal with those kind of issues, and those people who are, who might be encountering people who are dealing with those kind of issues, my message going forward is, first of all, for the people that are dealing with issues, it will always, forever will be, please ask for help. Please ask for help. Talk to someone you love and ask them to help you. And they don't have to heal you. Don't expect anybody to heal you. Don't expect that. I would say to exercise caution in that respect. What I would say is to just give people an opportunity to listen to what you have to say. Give people an opportunity to listen to what you're feeling. For you to express yourself, your emotions, your thoughts, your feelings, whatever that you are experiencing, give people a chance to listen. And then on the flip side of that coin, if you're someone who is encountering another person who appears to be having their own issues, then my advice to you is to listen. To withhold judgment for just a little bit, and listen. Get real quiet. Take a minute to observe. Take a minute to watch. See how they behave. See how a person behaves. Maybe they're not lazy, quote unquote lazy. Maybe they're not all those bad definitions of people who behave this way. Maybe they're just dealing with something and they need a little help. And then, don't be quick to solve their problem. Just listen. Be quick to listen. Don't be quick to fix. Be quick to listen. And then seek help by a professional. That is a very big step. A very big step. Seek out help by a professional. Okay. That was some heavy stuff. And I shared a little bit about myself, and I do so to try to help. But you know what? Here's what I know. Here's another thing that I know for certain. Everything's going to be okay. Everything is going to be okay. I just know it. I believe it. I believe it right here in el corazón, in the heart. In my heart, it tells me that everything is going to be okay. And I believe that for me, and I believe that for you too out there. So, you know what? Keep doing awesome. Keep doing great things. Keep moving forward. Even if it's a step at a time. Just a teeny tiny step. A step forward is a step forward. It's progress. And that's all that anybody could ask. That's all that you could expect of yourself. Keep doing that. Is fantastic. It's fantastic. You're doing awesome. You're doing great. I'm really very, very proud of all of you. And I think we'll end it right there. I can't wait to talk to you again on Monday. I think next week I'm going to take a chance and talk about relationships. Some dangerous territory there, but I think I'm going to give it a shot. Okay. You guys take care. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. And we'll talk to you again on Monday. God bless. This has been the This Way Out podcast, a part of the This Way Out project. If you enjoyed this episode and you want to hear future episodes, please subscribe. If you would like to get in touch with me to recommend future topics, provide feedback, or for any other reason, you can comment on the episode or send me an email at thiswoe.light@gmail.com. That's thiswoe.light@gmail.com. If you're interested in the other aspects of the This Way Out project, be sure to visit my website at thiswoe-light.com.